if you've followed my channel for a while, you probably know that I love looking for new channels that do reviews on Australia. I've been looking at this channel for a while, but this is the first chance I've had to do a reaction to one of his videos. So this is a YouTuber called Greg Jameson, and he is from the United States, as you probably can guess from the image on the screen, and currently living in Australia. This video dropped about a month ago, so it's a fairly new one, and it's titled Everything I Found Out Living in Australia for 6 months. Now, as per usual, I will add the link for this below, so you can go and check his channel out, or you can go check this one out. There is another video that he did earlier that was Everything I Found Out Living in Australia for 3 months. I haven't looked at that, but if you like this, you might want to go and check it out after we've gone through this video. Now, I'm doing this as a cold reaction, essentially. So, I watched probably the first 5 minutes and went, yep, this could be an interesting video. Then I scanned through, went, yep, okay, this looks like it could be worthwhile. So, we're doing this together, essentially. You're following along as I watch the video and figure it out. So, let's jump in and see what Greg has to say about Australia.
It has been 6 months since I arrived here in Australia from the US, and in this video I'm going to talk about everything I've found that's interesting or useful over these past 6 months. This is going to be a sequel to the 3 months video I did a while back. If I covered it in that video, I probably won't talk about it in this video. Now, I think the first thing that's really worth mentioning is what it's like being an American, specifically in Australia. And one thing as someone from the US that you will consistently experience when interacting with Aussies is questions and just kind of interest around gun laws back home. As an Aussie, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about Americans?
Probably just the fucking guns.
How did I know? When you think of Americans in the US, like what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Oh, no, you don't.
No, be completely honest, completely honest.
Burgers and guns.
Yeah, that's what I thought, all right. Now, 50% of the time, Australians will just be kind of curious about it and they'll ask questions about it. And the other 50% of the time, people will try to get a rise out of you and they will try to take the piss about it. And a great example of this is actually the comments section of this YouTube channel. In Australia, nobody carries an AR-15, so you won't get shot when you're minding your own business.
Not a great attempt at an Australian accent, and particularly given that he lives with 2 Australians. Sounded like he was half, well, it wasn't great, but at the end of it, it sounded like a Kiwi accent. Now, I am going to comment on this whole gun thing. I think that, yeah, there's definitely a lot of curiosity because culturally it is so different. Imagining a place where people can be walking through the supermarket with a gun in their handbags, because that won't happen here in Australia. The gun culture in America is just so very different from in Australia that we just can't wrap our heads around it. And yes, the main thing we hear in terms of gun culture in America is school shootings and violence, etc. So for Australians, we get a very negative view of the gun culture in America. So it's just that it is a huge cultural difference. And I know that Americans get very touchy when we bring this up. But it's just something that for us is almost incomprehensible.
Hey Mom, we still have that extra Kevlar vest. They're at it with the AR-15s again. As an American, I do find it pretty interesting as the sheer amount of times that it's gotten brought up since I have been living here in Australia really kind of brings home how different those laws are when compared to other countries. If you are an American coming to visit here, I just recommend maybe having a couple one-liners to throw back at people because you will get jokes tossed out about it all the time. So just be kind of mentally prepared for those ones.
From an Australian perspective, my advice to Australians when you're talking with Americans is that we need to recognise that it is a sensitive issue for Americans, and they are very, very much attached to their gun culture. They will repeatedly tell you it's in their constitution. It is their right to bear arms. It's not something that we can influence their opinion on. And even if we can't understand that culture, it's probably not our right to preach to them about our opinions when it comes to their culture. I honestly think, and this is how I tend to approach my communications with American people, I never discuss gun laws with Americans because it is one of those issues that we will never see eye to eye on. And it's going to cause offence. It's going to make them upset. And they may come back at me, they may get upset with me. So my personal advice to Australians is that unless it is someone that you've become really good friends with and you know how far you can push the boundaries and you're just joking around, I probably wouldn't even discuss American gun culture with an American when they come to Australia.
The other thing I experience all the time as an American living here is getting referred to as a Yank or just called the Yank. I guess it's kind of interesting as someone from the US because we never use that term back home.
Oh, where you boys going?
Oh, me and the Yank are gonna go grab feed. We're thinking Dirty Bird or Macca's.
The crazy irony is that this has its origins in America. When you look at the American Civil War, Southerners were Yankees. Sorry, Northerners were Yankees. And then you had your Southerners. So somehow that has just become part of Australian vernacular. And more often than not, we do refer to Americans as Yanks. Or if we've got a little bit of Cockney in our backgrounds, we may even refer to them as septic tanks. Not always meaning offence. That's just the Australian way.
All right, so the second thing definitely worth mentioning is food stuff that I've tried here, and I think the best way to show you is to just give you the highlight reel. All right, so I have some burger rings here, and looking at the packaging, it honestly reminds me of something we have in the States called Funyuns. All right, here goes. I will say it tastes nothing like a burger at all. If anything, it's like oniony ketchup flavor, but still pretty good. I'd say these are a solid 8 out of 10.
So who else found that watching him having those burger rings brought back memories of childhoods of having burger rings as snacks? I'm glad he gave them an 8 out of 10 because I would definitely give them an 8 or a 9 out of 10. I think they are one of those utterly classic Australian snacks. And I'm glad that he's actually talked about them because you rarely hear people who are talking about Australian food talk about burger rings.
Alright, so today at Woolies, I've found what could only be described as a hot dog bun with icing and then a cheese cinnamon roll.
I would actually say finger buns are quite different from hot dog buns. They are far softer and they are far sweeter. And of course I've got the sugary stuff on top. How classic is it that as Australians we would read that title, Mini Mighty Cheese Scrolls, and we would know immediately that the mighty is actually a pun on Vegemite. But he's looked at them and thought that it was cheese and cinnamon scrolls, which is an interesting combination of flavours. I'm not sure if that's something that maybe he would expect to find in America, because they do have some interesting flavour combinations, but I do find it very amusing that he was expecting a cinnamon scroll with cheese in it, and he's about to try a Vegemite and cheese scroll.
Let's give it a go. Bro, I'll be honest, this tastes exactly what it looks like. It tastes like a hot dog bun with icing.
Really? Okay, so my question for those subscribers who are well travelled, and you know who you are American hot dog buns really that sweet? And surely they're not that soft, because finger buns are really, really soft.
Obviously not bad, but 6 out of 10.
Well, of course it's a 6 out of 10, because you got the wrong one. You meant to get the ones with hundreds and thousands on them. It's like having a fairy bread finger bun. Those ones with just the plain white icing, they're just not as good. I would say, for me, finger buns, provided they've got the hundreds and thousands on them, although actually I don't mind those ones as well, but I would still rate them as an 8 out of 10. I really love finger buns, just the soft squishiness of them, the sweetness of them. They're just very, very yum. And of course they're full of sugar and really bad for you, but let's just ignore that.
Now for the scroll, you know, there's definitely Vegemite in this, which I thought that was just like the cheese being brown, but it actually works pretty well. I give it like a 7.5 out of 10.
Well, kudos to him, because I think of a lot of Americans, if they were to bite into that, not expecting there to be Vegemite there, they might have a bit of a reaction to it. So 7.5 out of 10 is a good score. And let's be real, it's also possible that that's not the greatest cheese and Vegemite scroll, because it can be so hit and miss sometimes. Sometimes you get a cheese and Vegemite scroll and it's just so packed with Vegemite that it's just overpowering and you can't taste the cheese and it's just a waste. And other times they get it spot on. So I'm happy with a 7.5 out of 10. That's a good score, especially coming from a Yank.
I picked up these Kukas cookies, and they have the most Australian packaging of all time.
Now, given that he's been in Australia for 6 months, you'd think that he might have picked up on the visual clues on the packaging to realise that Cookers is what it says, not Cookers. In other words, Cookers, short for Kookaburras. Wonder if his flatmates pointed that out to him later on.
Dude, this is a thick cookie, bro. Here goes. There's a lot going on there, but it's a little bit drier than I thought it would be. It's okay. It's not my favorite. I'd say like a 6.5 out of 10.
You know what? He's probably more generous than me. I've tried them, and I probably wouldn't go above a 5 out of 10. I agree with him. They're a bit dry. The jam's nice, but the chocolate is just that really, really cheap-ass chocolate that doesn't really contribute anything to the flavour of it because it is just a cheap-ass chocolate. I would prefer something that was a really nice quality shortbread, because I think that's what they're aiming at here, but they just kind of miss it. They are definitely kind of dry, a little bit bland, the chocolate's a bit ordinary.
Alright, so after trying pretty much every different Tim Tam flavor that I think is out there, I think that personally for me, my favorite has got to be these salted caramel ones. If you're gonna try anything besides the original, I would recommend these two.
Yeah, they actually are quite tasty. I'm not sure if they're my favourites out of all the alternates. Definitely Tim Tams with caramel are divine. But I like the mint ones. I like the white chocolate ones. Here's my question. Are they just trying to make it sound super Australian by calling it Murray River salted caramel? Or, like, why have they called it Murray River salted caramel? It's a freshwater river. There's not going to be a lot of salt in there.
Alright, so I'm trying the orange slices today. Bro, I did not think I would like this. Like 8.5 out of 10. This is nice. The orange flavor is not too strong.
Okay, well, I'm glad I've been nice to him throughout this video, because anyone who gives the orange slice their vote wins with me. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that really don't like orange slice, which of course for me through my life has always worked to my advantage, because it's meant that there's always been orange slice available when you get the packet of favourites, because usually it's one of the last ones that is chosen. Whereas for me, it is one of my favourites, up there alongside Monte Carlo, I think. So, good work, Greg. I'm glad you liked it.
Of those foods that I tried, I think the biggest positive surprise was definitely the orange slice biscuits. I thought those were not going to be very good at all, and maybe excluding Tim Tams, they're probably my favorite Australian biscuit that I've had. Today I went down to the jerky store, which technically is a South African store, but they do have crocodile jerky, which is the only way I could find to eat crocodile on short notice. And they also had emu jerky, so I guess we're gonna try that as well. I am not excited about this, bro.
I'm really not sure that you are going to get a really good taste for what it is actually like if you have jerky. I've had emu. I didn't mind it. It wasn't like it didn't rock my world. But jerky, I don't know. I think it's not truly trying the flavours. I could be wrong. But to me, I think if you want to try Australian meats, as in emu, kangaroo, etc., then you're better off actually waiting till you can actually try the real stuff.
It looks kind of freaky though.
Okay, just based on appearance, you can count me out.
Dude, it looks like tree bark. Alright, cheers. Bro.
Oh,
Bro, this is impossible to eat.
you can't eat it.
That is so tough. That is the toughest piece of jerky I've ever eaten in my life.
Let me try it.
People say crocodile tastes kind of fishy. Does it taste fishy?
Not to me.
Maybe there's a fishiness to it. I can't really tell.
No.
Yeah, jerky is not the best test for this, I don't think. Alright, so next we're trying the emu jerky. Ooh, this one smells worse than the crocodile, bro.
This smells bad. I can smell the bird in this. Can you?
Bro, alright, cheers.
Cheers.
That's gotta be the worst tasting jerky.
Holy shit.
It's so bad.
You know, there are probably some meats that just aren't meant to be turned into jerky. And perhaps emu is one of them. I'd be really curious if down the track he manages to find somewhere where he can try emu meat that's not jerky, and to hear what he actually thinks of that.
Alright, best way I could describe it, emu tastes kind of like almost like a bloody, I guess, like irony, gamey taste to it. Really bad in my opinion. I did not like the taste of it. I'm giving that like a 1.5 out of 10. The crocodile, honestly, really tough because I guess they must have had to do that for the jerky. But the flavor itself is actually pretty decent. It's kind of mostly like a rich chicken flavor, if I could say anything. The jerky itself, though, probably like a 5 or a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, it's too hot.
Just because it's literally shoe texture.
Well, I'm going to give them credit for trying, because had I been in the room with them and seen them trying to chew that tough croc jerky, just looking at it, I wouldn't have even tried. And emu jerky, yeah, if it was that crispy and tough, there's no way I would have tried it. So I think the takeaway here is probably don't try croc or emu in jerky form.
Number 3 is some more things with wildlife I've encountered here.
Bro, what even are you? It's like a grasshopper, but the leaf version.
So they don't have green grasshoppers in the United States? Maybe it's an adaptation, given that much of Australia has gum trees that are basically covered all year round. Don't know. I find that interesting that he can't tell that that's a grasshopper. And I will just mention that where I grew up in Tasmania, I think I would have been close to an adult before I saw the brown grasshoppers. First time I saw a brown grasshopper, I was like, ooh, what is this? Whereas as a kid, I can remember with my friends, we used to catch grasshoppers just for the fun of it. I don't know why you do these things as a kid, but hey, we all do stuff like that.
Well, boys, I caught myself a good old cane toad.
Seagull chicken thing. It's called a plover, and he's actually kind of lucky that it didn't attack him. If that was nesting and he was pushing it further away or herding it further away from its nest, then there's a good chance of it turning around and coming back at him.
A chicken and a seagull had a baby. Yo, get a room, bro.
So I finally found out what these psycho birds are in one of my previous videos. A ton of people were telling me that they were bats, but no, they're actually lorikeets. A while back, we found a snake hiding in the back at where I work. During this situation, I found out that at least here in Cairns, they have dedicated people just to pretty much catch and handle snakes whenever they end up kind of showing up on someone's property.
I think most areas have snake catchers that you can contact. Now, coming from someone who is pretty much only familiar with Tassie snakes, is that what a brown snake looks like, or is that something different again? Have to say, thought of a snake being indoors just creeps me out big time. Spiders I can handle, but snakes, if they come into my territory, that's nervous breakdown material.
Number 4 is outdoors and nature stuff, and recently I found out that you can actually see the southern lights here in Australia. If I'm being completely honest, I had no idea that the southern lights even existed. They're a different color from the northern lights, so they're more of like a purple and yellow color as opposed to the northern light counterpart over in the North Pole.
Honestly, if this was if I was going to travel to the North Pole, or at least, you know, the Northern Hemisphere, then this would be on my bucket list. And I'm a little bit envious because this is what my sister will be doing in, I think, December or January this year. Heading on a cruise to go and see the Northern Lights. Am I jealous? Heck yeah.
Another thing is they actually have ski resorts here in some of the southern parts of Australia. And again, my friend Brett actually moved down here to work at the ski resorts. And the craziest thing about this, at least to me, as someone who's grown up going skiing in the States. Oh! This sounds stupid, but like the trees. I'm so used to seeing pine trees when you go skiing, and seeing a completely different tree with snow on it just looks so strange to me.
Funny thing is that if you flip that around, I think as Australians we are so accustomed to Christmas images of pine trees covered in snow that for us, if we were to go to America and go to a ski resort, it would seem kind of natural to see pine trees covered in snow.
Something I noticed while camping here is as soon as you go camping a little ways away from the city, at night the amount of stars that you can see is absolutely insane.
You know, I'm not even sure if that picture truly does it justice. Probably because there's a bit of cloud cover there. Because it is just amazing if you can get out in the country and see the stars. The amount of light pollution we have, you don't realise it until you get out into the country.
And as far as camping goes, there's a huge culture around camping, I think, here in Australia, especially where I am in far north Queensland. So anytime that you leave the house, at least here in Cairns, you're going to see cars that are set up for camping. They have the four-wheel drive, they have the rooftop tents. A lot of them have the kind of awnings that are attached to the roof as well. And one other thing you see with these cars that you never see in the US is the snorkels on the cars. And here you see the snorkels everywhere. Here's how many cars I saw driving with snorkels down the road in 5 minutes.
Well, I think camping culture is pretty much everywhere in Australia. In terms of these big four-wheel drives with the snorkels and everything, I think that is something that you do tend to see more of in the northern parts of Australia, where people are going off-road more and, you know, doing more four-wheel driving and stuff like that, and heading to places like Kakadu. Whereas, you know, for me growing up, camping was all about grabbing the tent and whatever and heading to Bruny Island. And the road's paved the whole way there. You're at a campground, so, you know, there's no off-roading involved. So we never needed anything fancy.
Number 5 is stuff that I've noticed while driving here in Australia. Now, I've already made an entire video about driving in Australia, but here's some more stuff that I've noticed that wasn't in that video. The first thing I've found is even if you don't plan on buying a car here, as a foreigner, it's probably worth still getting your driver's license here. When applying for anything to do with government here, a lot of the times they'll ask you for some sort of Australian identification, and having your driver's license works for that. So I applied for a blue card a while back to volunteer at the hospital, and already having my driver's license made that process way easier.
Okay, so I'm not going to show you my driver's license, but Queensland, your driver's licenses are a little bit boring. Ours actually have a see-through bit in it with a hologram. They're kind of pretty, and they're more of a bluey green colour rather than a really bright yellow. But he's spot on. You need your license for everything in Australia. Even just opening a bank account, they want your driver's license. So definitely a bit of sound advice there.
The second thing is Oftentimes, when applying for jobs here, a requirement will be to have an Australian driver's license. Also, sometimes when you go to the shops to rent something, they'll ask you for a driver's license, and I found, at least at Bunnings, they won't accept anything but an Australian driver's license. If you are planning on buying a car here, I definitely recommend checking out the channel Redriven. It's a great resource on looking into any used cars in Australia, and they have a lot of tips and tricks when looking to buy your first car here. Another great resource if you're buying a car here is Redbook, and this will just give you kind of what price to expect when you're looking at a specific model of car.
Yep, I definitely always go to Redbook when I'm looking for a new car. But that said too, there's a number of different car sales, like online car sales sites, and it just pays to do your research. If you get an idea of what you are looking for, look for reviews of that particular model car, then look on car sales and see if that fits your budget. And, you know, check on Redbook when you find the car that you like to make sure that you're not being overcharged.
If you are getting used to driving on the left-hand side of the road, the biggest thing that helped me was always having a hands-free GPS system in my car. At first, I just had one of those dashboard mount ones. I got it for like $5 at Kohl's. Since then, I've actually installed a GPS system in my car. The GPS system is an absolute game changer. You also need to make sure that you have a hands-free system, as you can get a ticket just for holding your phone while driving here out in Queensland, and it's quite expensive too.
I actually think that applies everywhere in Australia, doesn't it?
The last thing I've found about driving here in Australia is it's like the States, where each state has their own traffic laws and they all vary slightly. Most notably though, I've found that speeding laws are different state to state, and the registration process looks a little bit different depending on the state that you're in.
Now, he finishes up with a quite lengthy explanation of Australian terms, like no worries, etc. I'm not going to go into that because I've spoken about that so many times on other videos, and this video is already up over half an hour. So I figure I'm not sure that there's much that I could add to it. He seems to have a pretty good understanding of Australian colloquialisms. I will say I actually liked the way he did it. So if you are interested, then click on the link in the description and go watch that part of his video, because I find him a little bit amusing the way he does do some of the stuff with his video. So worth it if you want to go see the rest of his video. But yeah, probably not worth me going through all that. So if you've stuck around to the end, thank you. Thanks for listening. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit the like button and leave a comment below. What are your thoughts on the various things that were mentioned in this video? Thanks, and I'll catch you in the next one.